Sign here, Hyung Nim. Minwoo tapped page 17, his voice too smooth. Standard terms. Jae-sung stared at the Mandarin characters. He was Seoul's most powerful operator, but right now, he was a blind man in a room full of wolves. His gut screamed trap, but the Chinese delegates were watching. Backing out meant war. The pen hovered, then dipped toward the paper. I wouldn't do that, if you value your life. The voice was female, American accented, and came from the girl refilling his water, the waitress he'd tipped for months because she seemed invisible. She didn't look invisible now. She stood over him, eyes locked on the contract. Page 17 isn't a partnership agreement, she said coolly. It's a confession of debt and legal surrender. You're not expanding your empire, you're signing it away. The room went lethal. The delegates reached for their jackets. Jae-sung didn't look at them. He looked at the waitress. Who are you? You know that feeling when one person's kindness changes the entire trajectory of someone's life? That's exactly what happened here. If you believe in the power of treating people with respect no matter who they are, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Now let's see how one man's simple decency saved everything he'd built. Because this story is about to take you somewhere you didn't expect. Now let's get into it. She set the water pitcher down with deliberate calm. Someone who can read Mandarin better than your right-hand man wants you to. Minwoo's face went pale. Hyung Nim, she's just a... Page 17, clause 4, she interrupted, her finger landing on the exact characters. Legal transfer of all Seoul operational assets to the Shanghai Syndicate upon signing. Page 18, clause 2, personal guarantee of debt repayment with your life as collateral. Page 19. That's enough. The head Chinese delegate stood, his hand inside his jacket. Jae-sung's mind raced. 3 months. 3 months of watching this girl move through the restaurant like background noise. Efficient, polite, unremarkable. Except she'd always smiled at him differently. Not the practice service industry smile, something genuine, something that made him tip her more than necessary because his father had taught him a simple truth. Treat people well not because of who they are, but because of who you are. And now she was reading a contract that was supposed to destroy him. He made his decision in half a second. He set the pen down, slowly, deliberately. Minwoo. His voice was ice. Step away from the table. Hyung Nim, I can explain. I said step away. The room shifted. Jae-sung's 2 bodyguards, who'd been standing by the door, moved forward. Minwoo stumbled backward, hands raised. The Chinese delegate's hand was still in his jacket. Mr. Park, your translator has made serious accusations. My translator, Jae-sung cut him off, just told me I was about to sign my death warrant. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to walk out of this restaurant, all of us, and if anyone reaches for a weapon, my men outside will make sure none of you make it to your cars. It was a bluff. Jae-sung had only brought 2 men, but his voice carried the weight of someone who'd built an empire on calculated risks and unshakable confidence. The delegate's eyes narrowed, calculating. Then, slowly, he removed his hand from his jacket. Empty. This deal is off, Jae-sung said. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and looked at the waitress. You're coming with me. She didn't hesitate. Lead the way. She untied her apron at the service counter, folded it neatly, set it down, and kept walking. No panic, no rush, just smooth, practiced movement that told Jae-sung everything he needed to know about who this woman really was underneath the uniform. They walked out together, Jae-sung in front, the waitress behind him, his 2 bodyguards flanking them. Minwoo stayed frozen. At the table, face drained of color. The Chinese delegates didn't move, but their eyes tracked every step. The restaurant's main dining area was half full. Normal people eating normal meals, completely unaware that a war almost started 20 feet away. Jae-sung's car was parked out front. His driver saw him coming and opened the back door immediately. Get in, Jae-sung told the waitress. She slid into the leather seat without argument. He followed. The door shut. The driver pulled into Seoul traffic. For 10 seconds, nobody spoke. Then Jae-sung turned to her. Start talking. She met his gaze without flinching. My name is Kira. I've been working at that restaurant for 4 months, and yes, I knew exactly what kind of deals happened in that back room. That's not what I'm asking. You're asking why I helped you. She leaned back against the seat. Because you were the only person who treated me like a human being. Not a servant, not invisible. You didn't snap your fingers. Didn't look through me like I was part of the furniture. You said please, you said thank you, you asked how my day was going, and you actually waited for the answer. A pause. And when I watched you about to sign your life away because someone you trusted was selling you out, I couldn't just stand there and let it happen? She paused. I decided to return the favor. Jae-sung studied her. Mid-20s, mixed heritage, black features, something else underneath. Her Mandarin had been flawless. Not restaurant-level fluent, not even business level. That kind of fluency came from years of dedicated training. Where did that come from? The Mandarin, the way you read that contract. You didn't learn any of that waiting tables. No, I didn't. Kira looked back out at the city passing by. My mother was a maid for a Korean family. She died when I was 5. The man she worked for, he had no children of his own. His wife couldn't have any, so he took me in, raised me like I was his daughter, gave me everything, education, languages, business training. He taught me how to read a room full of men who wanted to take advantage of me before I was old enough to drive. Sounds like he loved you. He did, not because he had to, because he chose to. Every single day he chose to. Something in her voice broke, just barely. He used to say knowledge was the only weapon no one could ever take from you. Past tense, Jae-sung said quietly. The softness disappeared. He died 6 months ago, and the second he was gone, his wife showed her real colors, arranged a marriage for me, to the Yai family in Incheon. Some alliance deal I was never told about, never asked about. I said no. She said I didn't get a choice. So you ran? Kira nodded. I've been surviving on restaurant tips and cheap rent ever since. Your tips specifically. You kept me fed when I had nothing else. Jae-sung's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. 3 messages from his remaining lieutenants. 1 from his accountant. All asking the same thing. What happened with the Shanghai deal? He silenced the phone. You just made yourself a target. The Chinese won't forget what you did, and Minwoo... He paused. Minwoo was my right hand for 6 years. If he betrayed me, someone paid him. Someone who now knows you stopped their plan. Kira's expression didn't change. I know. Then you also know you can't go back to that restaurant. Can't go back to wherever you've been staying. They'll find you. I know that too. So what's your plan? She looked out the window at the Seoul skyline, lights glittering against the night. I don't have one yet. Jae-sung made a decision he'd probably regret. You'll stay at one of my properties, temporarily, until we figure out who set this up and why. I don't need your charity. It's not charity. His voice softened slightly. My father taught me something I've never forgotten. When someone shows you loyalty, you honor it. You gave me truth when I was surrounded by lies. You risked your safety for mine? That's not something I take lightly. He held her gaze. So this isn't charity, it's gratitude, and it's the right thing to do. Kira studied him for a long moment, something unreadable in her eyes. Your father sounds like he was a good man. He was. He taught me that real power isn't about fear. It's about how you treat people when you don't have to treat them well. Jae-sung glanced at his phone again, then back at her. Will you accept help, or am I dropping you at a motel where you'll be dead by morning? She almost smiled. You don't pull punches. Neither do you. You're signing it away. You didn't sugarcoat anything. Would sugarcoating have saved your life? No. Then we understand each other. She nodded slowly. Okay, I'll accept your help, but I'm not staying locked in some apartment like a prisoner. I need to work. I need to stay visible, just differently. What do you have in mind? There's a daycare 2 blocks from my old place. They're always hiring. I'll change my hair, wear glasses, blend in as someone completely different. Kids are good cover. Nobody looks twice at a daycare worker. Jae-sung raised an eyebrow. You're trained in business contracts in Mandarin and you want to work with toddlers? I like kids. They're honest. They don't care what family you come from or what mistakes you've made. Her voice softened. My father used to say children see people for who they really are, not who they're supposed to be. I could use some of that honesty right now. The warmth in her voice when she mentioned her father told Jae-sung everything he needed to know. She wasn't just running from a forced marriage, she was grieving, and she was doing it alone. The car pulled up to a sleek high-rise in Gangnam. The driver parked in the underground garage. They took a private elevator to the 15th floor. The apartment was minimalist. Clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a kitchen that looked like it had never been used, modern furniture in neutral tones. This is one of your properties? Kira asked, taking it in. One of several. I use it for business guests who need discretion. Jae-sung walked to the window. Bedrooms through that door, bathroom attached. Security code for the front door is 9247. Don't open it for anyone except me or my driver. And if someone tries to get in? He handed her a small black device, a panic button. Press this, my security team will be here in 3 minutes. Kira took it, turning it over in her hands. You're being very trusting for someone who just discovered his right-hand man tried to destroy him. I'm not trusting, I'm observant. Jae-sung moved toward the door, then paused. You had every opportunity to let me sign that contract. You could have stayed invisible, kept collecting your tips, stayed safe, but you didn't. You risked everything to save a stranger. He met her eyes. That tells me who you are, and I don't ignore that kind of character. Kira's eyes glistened slightly. Thank you. Get some rest. We'll figure out our next move in the morning. He opened the door, then stopped again. Kira, that man who raised you, the one who treated you like a daughter even when he didn't have to, he would be proud of what you did tonight. Her voice was barely a whisper. I hope so. He left, the door clicking shut behind him. Kira stood alone in the apartment, the city sprawling below her like a sea of lights. She walked to the window, pressing her palm against the cold glass. 4 months of hiding, 4 months of being invisible, of surviving on tips and fear, and in 10 minutes she'd thrown it all away, but she'd do it again. Watching someone lose everything because of greed and betrayal, she couldn't stomach it. Not after watching her father's empire get carved up the moment he stopped breathing, not after seeing his wife erase his kindness like it had never mattered. Her father had taught her something the world kept trying to make her forget. Kindness isn't weakness. Treating people with dignity isn't naive. Sometimes it's the only thing that saves you. Tonight, that lesson had proven true. She pulled out her burner phone. Cheap, no contacts, bought with cash. Just a tool for survival. For a moment, she considered calling someone. Anyone. But there was no one left. Her father was gone. His wife had made it clear Kira was nothing but a transaction. The few friends she'd had in that world had disappeared the moment she became inconvenient. She was alone. Except, maybe she wasn't. Not completely. Jae-sung didn't owe her anything. He could have dropped her at a street corner and driven away, but he didn't. He offered safety, gratitude, respect. Maybe kindness worked both ways. Kira set the phone down and looked out at Seoul. Tomorrow she'd become someone new. Change her hair, her clothes, her routine. Disappear into plain sight. But tonight, for the first time in months, she felt something close to hope. 3 days later. Kira barely recognizes herself in the mirror. Her hair is shorter now, cut into a neat bob and dyed a warm chestnut brown, nothing like the black braids she'd worn at the restaurant. Black-framed glasses perch on her nose, changing the shape of her face. She wears a cheerful yellow polo with Sunshine Kids Academy embroidered on the chest. She looks like every other daycare worker in Seoul. Exactly the point. Miss Kira, look what I made. A 4-year-old named Minho runs up with a crayon drawing, something that might be a dinosaur or possibly a spaceship. Wow, Minho, that's incredible. She crouches down to his level, genuinely impressed. Tell me about it. While he launches into an elaborate explanation involving robots and outer space, Kira keeps half her attention on the window. Parents are starting to arrive for pickup. She scans each face, each car, looking for anything that doesn't belong. Black sedans, men in suits watching too long, anyone paying too much attention, nothing. Just tired parents collecting their kids after long workdays. She's been careful. Different route to work every morning, cash only. No patterns, no social media, no credit cards. She even bought new clothes from a secondhand shop, nothing that could be traced. But she knows better than to relax completely. Whoever paid Minwoo to betray Jae-sung won't just give up. And the family hunting her, they have resources she can't outrun forever. Her phone buzzes in her pocket. Unknown number. She steps away from the children, keeping her voice low. Yes? It's me. Jae-sung's voice quiet and controlled. We need to talk. Tonight. Same apartment. 8 o'clock. Can you get there safely? Yes. Good. I'll see you at 8. The line goes dead. Kira slips the phone back into her pocket and turns around to find Minho staring up at her with wide eyes. Miss Kira, you okay? You look scared. She forces a smile and ruffles his hair gently. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just some grown-up stuff. Nothing for you to worry about. She kneels down again. Now tell me more about this robot dinosaur spaceship. Does it have laser eyes? His face lights up. Yes, and rocket boosters. The kids don't care that she's running from a forced marriage. They don't care that she witnessed a near assassination 3 days ago. They care that she remembers their names, that she listens when they talk, that she treats their crayon drawings like they're masterpieces. Her father was right. Children see people for who they really are, and right now, she needs that reminder more than anything. 8 o'clock sharp. Kira enters the apartment using the security code, moving quietly through the space. Jae-sung was already standing by the window when Kira walked in, glass of whiskey in his hand. Untouched, the city lights reflect off the glass, making him look almost ghostly, the kind of stillness that told her something was wrong before he even opened his mouth. "What happened?" she asked, setting her bag down. He didn't turn around right away. When he did, his expression was controlled, the way a man's face looks when he's been holding bad news for hours and is only now allowing himself to set it down. Minwoo is dead. Kira went still. Han River, body dumped like garbage. He talked before he died, gave up everything. The name behind it all is Choi Dae-jung, Busan Syndicate. The name means nothing to Kira, but the way Jae-sung says it tells her everything she needs to know. Who is he? Runs the Busan Syndicate, one of the biggest operations south of Seoul. Jae-sung picks up the whiskey glass but still doesn't drink. The Shanghai deal was never about partnership. It was a hostile takeover from the beginning. Choi paid the Chinese to write that contract, paid Minwoo to make sure I signed it blind. Once I was legally bound and unable to pay the manufactured debt, Choi would have taken everything, my territory, my operations, my life. Kira processes this, her mind already running through scenarios. But I stopped it, which means he's eliminating witnesses, anyone who knows what he tried to do. Jae-sung finally meets her eyes. Minwoo's dead. The Chinese delegates have disappeared. My sources say they never made it back to Shanghai, and now Choi's people are asking questions about a woman who was at the restaurant that night. He knows about me. He's digging, which means it's only a matter of time before he connects you to your stepmother, to the arranged marriage, to the Yi family in Incheon. Jae-sung set the whiskey glass down, still untouched. But that's not why I called you here tonight. He reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, set it on the table between them, screen facing up. Kira looked down. The message was short, 3 lines, cold as iron. We know about your waitress. The Yi family sends their regards. This isn't a warning, it's a countdown. She read it again. The words didn't change. They found me, she said. Her voice didn't shake, but something behind her eyes did. Not just found you. They know you're under my protection. Choi and the Yi family are working together now. Your stepmother gave them everything. Your photos, your background, your connection to your father's name. Choi uses you as leverage against me. The Yi family gets you back for the marriage alliance. Everyone wins, except you. The apartment felt different, heavier. Kira walked to the window, her spot now, without either of them naming it, and pressed her palm against the glass. So what do we do? She asked. Quiet, but not defeated, never defeated. Jae-sung watched her for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful, like he'd been turning this over for hours. We get married, Kira. Turned slowly. What? Think about it. The Yi family's claim on you is based on an arrangement your stepmother made after your father died. A verbal agreement between families, nothing legally binding. But if you're already married, publicly, officially, to someone more powerful than they are, their claim disappears. They can't touch you without going through me first. And Choi? Right now, he threatens you because you're reachable, alone. But if you're my wife, coming after you means coming after everything I've built. That changes his calculation completely. Kira stared at him. For a long moment she didn't say anything. Then, another arranged marriage. The words came out quiet, controlled, but underneath them was something that hurt to hear. Kira, do you understand what that sounds like? She wasn't raising her voice. That made it worse. I left everything behind. My home, my father's memory, everything I ever knew. I ran for 6 months because I refused to be traded, like property in someone else's deal, and now you're standing here asking me to do the exact same thing. It's not the same. It feels the same, Jae-sung. She turned back to the window. Her reflection stared back at her, a woman trapped by the same world she'd been running from. He didn't push, didn't argue, didn't try to talk her out of what she was feeling. He just stood there, quietly, and waited. Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for another person is give them the space to feel everything they need to feel without someone rushing them through it. A full minute passed, then another. Finally, Kira spoke. If I say yes, if I actually do this. She turned to face him. The pain was still there, but underneath it, something harder, sharper, the woman her father raised. There are conditions. Name them. I sit at every table where decisions are made. I'm not decoration. I'm not a prop you parade around to scare off the Yi family. I'm a partner in this, in everything. You already are. I'm serious. So am I. He held her gaze without flinching. You saved my life. You've been helping me navigate this since the very beginning. I don't need a prop, Kira. I need exactly what you are. Something in the way he said it made her chest tighten. She pushed it down. Survival first. Fine, she said. I'll do it. Jae-sung nodded, then, because he was exactly the kind of man he was. Thank you. I know what this costs you, and I want you to know, this is protection. That's all it is. I won't expect anything from you. I won't cross any lines, not one. You have my word. Kira looked at him, really looked at him, the quiet steadiness in his eyes, the way he held himself, never demanding, never taking up more space than he needed, a man who meant exactly what he said. Okay, she whispered, then we do this. The marriage happened 3 days later, fast, quiet, a small office with fluorescent lighting and a clerk who didn't ask questions. 2 witnesses, Jae-sung's lawyer and his driver, a man who'd been loyal to the Park family since before Jae-sung was old enough to understand what loyalty meant. No flowers, no celebration, just signatures on paper and the strange heavy weight of what they'd just done settling over both of them like fog. Kira signed her name, and when she set the pen down, she looked up and found Jae-sung watching her. Not at the paper, at her, his eyes quiet, reading her the way he read everything, carefully, completely, missing nothing. You okay? He asked. She held his gaze, and for a second something flickered across her face, something deeper than survival, something she wasn't ready to name. Are you expecting something from this? He asked, softly, genuinely, not accusing, just asking, the way someone asks when they actually want to know the answer. Kira looked at him for a long time, then she shook her head. No, she said, I'm not. But they both felt the weight of what she didn't say. That night, back at the apartment, their apartment now, they sat across from each other at the small kitchen table. Tea between them, the city humming outside, the silence between them comfortable in a way it hadn't been before, like the paperwork had given them both quiet permission to just exist in the same space without needing to explain why. So, Kira said, wrapping both hands around her cup. Husband. The corner of Jae-sung's mouth moved, not quite a smile, close. Wife. Weird. Very. They looked at each other, and for a moment something real passed between them, something that had nothing to do with strategy or survival or the Yi family or Choi Dae-jung, something quieter, something neither of them was ready to name. Kira looked away first. A week passed, then 2. The plan started working exactly the way Jae-sung predicted. Word spread, carefully, deliberately, that Park Jae-sung had married. The Yi family heard it first through their own channels. Kira's stepmother called once, a single phone call that lasted 40 seconds. She didn't congratulate them. She didn't say anything at all. She just breathed on the other end of the line, cold and calculating, and hung up. But the silence said everything. The game had changed, and she knew it. The Yi family backed off, not gracefully, not happily, but they backed off, because challenging a marriage to someone like Jae-sung meant challenging Jae-sung himself, and right now they couldn't afford that. Choi was a different kind of problem. He didn't back down easily, but the marriage changed his leverage entirely. You couldn't threaten someone's wife without threatening the man himself, and Jae-sung made sure Choi understood exactly what that cost. Quietly, firmly, through channels that didn't leave traces but left impressions, the way his father had taught him to handle problems that required patience instead of violence. But even as the walls around them held, something else was changing, something neither of them talked about out loud, something that lived in the spaces between their conversations, in the small moments they didn't name. It started small. Kira noticing the way Jae-sung always made sure there was tea ready when she came home from the daycare. The way he remembered things she mentioned in passing, the way he asked about Minho, the 4-year-old who'd claimed her as his storyteller, and actually listened to the answer with the same focus he gave his most important business calls. And Jae-sung noticing the way Kira filled the apartment with life without trying, the way she hummed while she looked out the window at night, the way she laughed, really laughed, the kind that came from somewhere deep, when he said something unexpected. The way she looked at him sometimes when she thought he wasn't watching, like she was trying to solve a puzzle she couldn't quite figure out. It was Kira who brought it up first. They were sitting in the living room, late, the city dark outside. Jae-sung was reading something on his phone, messages from his lieutenants, updates on Choi's movements. Kira was curled in the corner of the sofa, legs tucked under her, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Jae-sung. He looked up. Hmm? She was quiet for a second, then with the same directness she'd shown the night she stopped him from signing that contract. We're married. I'm aware. I mean actually married, not just on paper. She held his gaze, steady, unashamed. I think we should be together, in every way that being married means. The room went very, very quiet. Jae-sung set his phone down. Slowly, his expression didn't change, not at first, but something shifted behind his eyes, something deep and complicated and a little bit painful. Kira. Don't. She held up her hand. Don't say it's not necessary for the plan. Don't say it's not part of the strategy. I know all of that. I'm not talking about strategy. He looked at her, really looked, and for a moment, the mask he wore, the controlled, calculated mask of a man who'd learned to keep everything locked down, slipped just enough for her to see what was underneath. I can't, he said. Why? He stood, walked to the window, the same window she always stood at, pressed his own palm against the glass, a gesture so unconscious, so mirroring of her own habit that it made her breath catch. Because if I do that, he said, his voice low, I'll get attached, and I know. I know what happens when that attachment becomes real, when it stops being strategy and starts being something I can't control. He turned to face her. And if this ends, if one day you decide you don't want this anymore and you walk away, I won't be able to let go. Kira stared at him. The honesty in his voice hit her somewhere deep, somewhere she hadn't let anyone touch in a very long time. Jae-sung, I'm not saying this to push you away. His voice was careful, gentle even. I'm saying this because you deserve to know the truth, about me, about what's at stake if we cross that line. He paused. And the truth is, I'm terrified, not of Choi, not of the Yi family, of losing you, and I don't want to start something I can't survive losing. The silence that followed was heavy, not uncomfortable, just full of everything they were both feeling and neither of them was quite ready to say out loud. Kira nodded slowly. Okay, she said, I understand. And she did, maybe better than anyone else in the world could have. Days passed after that. The air between them changed, not colder but more careful, more aware, like they were both walking on glass and trying not to break it. It was a Wednesday night when it happened, the moment that changed everything between them. They were getting ready for bed, their own beds in their own spaces, because that was the agreement. Kira was in the bedroom, hair down, glasses off, wearing an oversized sweater that made her look younger than she was. Jae-sung was in the living room, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, going over documents one last time before sleep. She walked out, stood in the doorway. The lamplight behind her caught the edges of her hair, soft and warm. Jae-sung. He looked up. I want to do something for you. Her voice was quiet, not flirtatious, not calculated, just honest, the way she always was when it mattered most. You've given me safety, a home, protection. You've been nothing but kind to me since the night I walked into that restaurant and changed both our lives. She paused. Let me give you something back. Let me take care of you the way you've been taking care of me. He watched her. The lamplight caught the side of her face. She looked in that moment like something he didn't deserve. Why? He asked, and his voice, just for a second, cracked, just barely, just enough for her to hear it if she was paying attention. She was. Kira looked at him with those steady, honest eyes. Because we're married. 3 words, simple, plain, meant with nothing but sincerity, and they shattered him. Because he heard what she didn't say. He heard the arrangement behind it, the logic, the transaction. She was doing this because it made sense, because they were husband and wife on paper and this is what husbands and wives do, not because she felt something for him that went beyond gratitude and survival and the quiet comfort of someone who'd been kind to her when the world wasn't. Not because of love. Something in his chest cracked open. Quietly, the kind of crack that doesn't make a sound but changes the shape of everything inside. He swallowed, looked at her for a long, long moment, long enough for the silence itself to become a sentence. Then softly, "Is that the reason?" "What do you mean?" "Being married?" His voice was careful, controlled, but underneath it, raw, exposed in a way she'd never heard from him before. "Is that why you want this? Because it's what married people do?" Kira tilted her head, genuinely confused by the weight behind his question. "Isn't it?" He almost smiled. Almost, but it didn't reach his eyes, not even close. "Yeah," he said. "I suppose it is." He stood, gathered his documents, walked past her toward the bedroom door, pausing just close enough for her to feel the warmth of him, close enough to touch if either of them reached out. Neither did. "Good night, Kira." "Good night." He disappeared into his room, the door closed softly behind him, and Kira stood in the hallway, something tugging at her chest, something she couldn't name yet. Something that had everything to do with the way his voice sounded when he asked that question. Not angry, not cold, not even disappointed exactly. Heartbroken. She pressed her back against the wall and closed her eyes. The weeks that followed were quieter than either of them expected. Choi's empire began to crack. Choi thought he was untouchable. He was wrong. It started with a phone call Jae-sung made on a Wednesday night. Kira was at the kitchen table going over documents when he stepped onto the balcony, phone pressed to his ear. She couldn't hear the full conversation, but she heard enough. "Han, it's Park Jae-sung. We need to talk about Daegu." The next morning, Jae-sung was gone before she woke up. He didn't tell her where, but when he came back that evening, something had changed in the way he carried himself. Lighter, like a man who just placed the first piece of a puzzle he'd been planning for weeks. "Han is in," he said simply, setting his jacket down. Kira looked up from the stove where she was making dinner. Something simple, something warm, the kind of cooking that made the apartment feel like a home instead of a safe house. "Han from Daegu?" He's been waiting for someone to move on Choi. He just needed to know who was leading it. Jae-sung sat down at the table, rolled up, his sleeves, the way he did when he was about to work. And he needed to know it was someone he could trust. "And he trusts you?" "He trusted my father." Jae-sung met her eyes. "That's enough." The meetings happened over the next 2 weeks, not in one place, never in one place. Jae-sung understood that the moment you became predictable, you became vulnerable. So the locations changed every time. The first one was in a private room at the back of a seafood restaurant in Mapo. Han was a broad man with kind eyes and hands that looked like they'd seen things no one should ever see. He sat across from Jae-sung and Kira and listened, really listened, the way men in his world rarely did. When Jae-sung finished laying out the plan, Han nodded once. "Choi's supply routes run through my territory," Han said. "I know every single one. I know who drives them. I know which nights they move and which nights they don't." He looked at Kira, studied her for a moment, then looked back at Jae-sung. "She's sharp." "Sharper than me," Jae-sung said, and he meant it. Han smiled, just barely. "Then let's begin." The second meeting was with Park, Gwangju, a man who didn't talk much but understood numbers better than anyone in the South. They met in a quiet office above a tea shop, the kind of place no one would ever think to look. Park spread financial documents across the table and pointed to the gaps in Choi's operation with surgical precision. "Here," Park said, tapping a column of numbers. "And here, these are the arteries. Cut them, and the whole body stops bleeding in 3 weeks." Kira leaned forward, read the numbers herself. Her eyes moved fast, then she looked at Park. "What about this route?" She pointed to a line running between Busan and Seoul. "This one doesn't show up in any of your documents." Park raised an eyebrow, looked at the paper again, looked at Kira. "You're right, it doesn't." "Because it's the one Choi is hiding," she said. "The one he uses when everything else fails. The backup, the emergency line." She looked at Jae-sung. "We need to find it." Jae-sung watched her from across the table, the way she moved through the information, fast, instinctive, the way her father must have taught her. Like this was something she was born to do. And in that moment, sitting in a quiet office above a tea shop in Gwangju, he felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Pride, not in himself, in her. They found the hidden route 3 days later. One of Han's people tracked it, a single truck that moved only at night, only on weekends, carrying something Choi had been keeping off every official record. When they cut it, quietly, without drama, without violence, just the right phone call to the right person at the right time, Choi felt it immediately, like someone had reached inside his chest and pulled something out. His lieutenants started talking to each other after that, comparing notes, asking questions Choi couldn't answer. Why were the Daegu routes gone? Who shut down the Gwangju accounts? Where did the money disappear? Choi didn't have answers, because Jae-sung and Kira had been 3 steps ahead of him the entire time. Not loud, not aggressive, not the kind of war that showed up in the news, the quiet kind, the kind that dismantled you from the inside out before you even realized you were bleeding. Then came the night Choi decided to stop running and turn around. It happens in a warehouse in Busan, Choi's territory, but surrounded by Han's people, Park's resources, Lee's intelligence network, neutral ground that isn't neutral at all. Jae-sung and Kira arrive together. She's armed, a small handgun tucked into a holster beneath her jacket, just in case. Choi Dae-jung was already there, flanked by 3 of his lieutenants. He's younger than Kira expected, mid-40s, expensive suit, cold eyes that calculate everything. Park Jae-sung, Choi says, his voice smooth. You've been busy. So have you, murder, fraud, territory theft. Jae-sung doesn't sit, neither does Kira. We're here to offer you a choice. A choice. Choi smiles without warmth. How generous. You can walk away, permanently, leave Seoul alone, leave Daegu alone, leave Gwangju alone, take your remaining operations back to Busan and stay there. And if I refuse? Jae-sung slides a folder across the table. Then this goes to your lieutenants, all of them. Proof of your offshore accounts, evidence that you've been skimming profits for years, documentation of every territory violation, every broken agreement, every lie. One of Choi's lieutenants, a man named Song, steps forward and opens the folder. His expression changes as he reads. Hyung-nim, Song says quietly, is this true? It's fabricated nonsense, Choi snaps. It's bank statements, Jae-sung corrects, transaction records, audio recordings, all verified by independent sources. He looks at Song directly. Your boss has been stealing from you for years, putting your lives at risk while he gets rich? Is that the kind of leader you want to follow? Song looks between the papers and Choi, conflict clear on his face. Don't listen to him, Choi orders. He's trying to divide us. No. Kira speaks for the first time, her voice carrying across the warehouse. He's trying to give you the truth. What you do with it is your choice. Choi's eyes lock on her. And who are you? Someone who stopped you from destroying a good man? Someone who knows what real leadership looks like? Kira steps forward. My father taught me that power without honor is tyranny. You've built your empire on lies and betrayal. That doesn't make you strong. It makes you weak. Your father? Choi's expression shifts, recognition. You're Don Kwan's daughter, the one who ran from the Yi family. The one who refused to be sold like property. Yes. Choi laughs, but there's no humor in it. You think you can lecture me about power? You're a runaway hiding behind Park's protection. I think, Kira says calmly, that you're scared. You tried to take Jae-sung's empire and failed. Now your own people are questioning you. Your allies have abandoned you. Your territory is shrinking, and you absolutely know that if you fight us, you lose. The warehouse goes silent. Song sets the folder down carefully. Then he steps away from Choi. I'm out, Hyung-nim. I won't follow a leader who steals from his own people. A second lieutenant follows, then the third. Choi stands alone. His face goes through several emotions: rage, disbelief, calculation. Then, finally, acceptance. Fine, he says through gritted teeth. I'll pull back to Busan, but this isn't over. Yes, Jae-sung says quietly. It is, because if you ever come after us again, we won't offer you a choice. We'll destroy you, completely, and we'll do it together. He gestures to include Han, Park, and Lee, who've been watching from the shadows. All 3 step forward, a united front. Choi looks at them, at the lieutenants who've abandoned him, at Jae-sung and Kira standing side by side. He knows he's beaten. "You'll regret this," he says finally. "No," Kira responds. "You will, because you could have built something that lasted. Instead, you built it on sand, and when the tide came in, you had nothing left." Choi walks out of the warehouse, defeated but alive. The warehouse door closed, the echo faded. Jae-sung and Kira stood in the silence. "That went well," she said finally. "Don't jinx it." She almost laughed, almost. They walked out together into the Seoul night, shoulders close but not touching, the same way they'd walked out of that restaurant the very first night. Two people who'd started as strangers and become something neither of them had words for yet. Something that mattered. If this story is pulling at something inside you, if you're feeling what Jae-sung and Kira are feeling without either of them saying it out loud, then you already know what to do. Subscribe, like, because what's coming next is about to test everything they've built, and not everyone survives that kind of test. Stay with me. 2 weeks after Choi walked out of that warehouse, everything changed again. It started with lunch. Kira and Jae-sung were at a quiet restaurant in Gangnam, the kind of place where powerful people ate without being watched. Not fancy, not flashy, just good food and privacy. Kira was talking about Minho, something about a crayon drawing of a dinosaur that had somehow eaten the entire classroom in the story she told that morning. Jae-sung was listening the way he always did when she talked about the kids, like it was the most important conversation in the world. Then the door opened. Song walked in like he owned the place, suit pressed, hair slicked back, a leather folder tucked under his arm, thick, expensive, the kind that held documents that meant something. He scanned the room once, found their table, and moved toward it with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly what he was about to do and enjoying every second of it. Jae-sung saw him first. His chopsticks stopped mid-air. Something shifted in his expression. Not surprise. Recognition. The kind of look a man gets when a storm he's been watching build finally makes landfall. Song pulled out a chair, sat down, without being invited, without asking, like the space had been waiting for him all along. "Kira," he said, warm, almost friendly, like they were old friends catching up over coffee. He didn't look at Jae-sung, not once. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Kira set her chopsticks down carefully. Her eyes moved to Jae-sung first, checking in, reading him, then back to Song. "You are, but something tells me you don't care." Song smiled, the kind of smile that said he'd expected exactly that and loved it. He set the leather folder on the table, slid it across, not to Jae-sung, to Kira directly, deliberately. His hand brushed Jae-sung's coffee cup as he did it. Not an accident. "A proposal," Song said, "from your stepmother." Jae-sung's hand moved toward the folder. Instinct. His job was to protect her. His job was to see what was coming before it did. But Song's next words stopped him cold. "This is for her, Mr. Park." Song's eyes finally moved to Jae-sung, slow, deliberate, the kind of look that was designed to make a man feel like he was being sized up and found wanting. "Not you." The air at the table shifted. Jae-sung didn't flinch, didn't look away. He held Song's stare with the kind of calm that came from running a billion-won empire and destroying one rival's operation in the last month alone. He was not a man who could be made to feel small, but he said nothing, not yet. He wanted to hear what Song had to say first, wanted to see exactly what was inside that folder before he made his move. Kira opened it herself, read the first page, then the second. Her eyes moved quickly, the way they moved over that contract in the restaurant the night everything started, processing, calculating, missing nothing. Song watched her read with visible satisfaction, like he was watching something beautiful unfold exactly the way he'd planned. "The Eastern Seoul operations," Song said, leaning back, relaxed, comfortable. "All of them, everything your father built, a clean transfer. Your stepmother is prepared to hand it over, completely, no strings, no conditions." Kira didn't look up from the documents, still reading. "Why?" she asked, direct, the way her father taught her. Song shrugged, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Because it was always supposed to be yours." He paused, let that land, then tilted his head, and the next part came out slow, deliberate, each word placed exactly where it needed to go. "And because you've spent long enough letting someone else make decisions about your life, don't you think?" His eyes flicked to Jae-sung, quick, pointed. The message was clear. Him. Jae-sung's jaw tightened, not because the words stung, they didn't. He was a billionaire. He'd sat across from men far more dangerous than Song and didn't lose a second of sleep. Song was nothing, a messenger, a tool, but the message itself, that was the thing, because Song wasn't just insulting him. Song was handing Kira a mirror, and in that mirror, for just a second, Jae-sung saw the reflection of every fear he'd been carrying since the night he told her he couldn't be with her. The fear that one day she'd realize she didn't need him. The fear that she'd walk away. He pushed it down, buried it, locked it behind the wall he'd spent years building. This wasn't the time. Song. Jae-sung's voice cut through the table like a blade. Quiet, controlled, but with enough weight behind it to make the air change. You walked into my space, uninvited. You slid documents across my table without my permission. And you've spent the last 2 minutes trying to sell my wife a story that has nothing to do with kindness and everything to do with whoever sent you here. He leaned forward, eyes locked on Song, the kind of eye contact that made men remember exactly who they were sitting across from. So let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to finish whatever you came here to say, and then you're going to stand up, walk out that door, and go back to the people who sent you and tell them, Park Jae-sung is not someone you sit across from and disrespect. Not today, not ever. Are we clear? Song held Jae-sung's gaze for a long moment. Something flickered behind his eyes. Not fear exactly, but awareness. The kind of awareness that came from suddenly remembering that the man across the table had people who disappeared in the middle of the night and never came back. Crystal, Song said. His voice didn't waver, but the easy confidence had shifted, just slightly. He straightened his jacket, looked at Kira one last time. Think about it. That's all I'm asking. Your father's legacy, your empire, yours, no one else's. He stood, picked up nothing, left the folder where it was, and walked out. The restaurant kept moving around them, chopsticks clicking, conversations flowing, normal Tuesday lunch. Nobody at the other tables had any idea what had just happened, but at their table, everything had changed. Kira was still looking at the folder, her fingers resting on the edge of it, not gripping it, not pushing it away, just resting there, like she was feeling the weight of what was inside it without even opening another page. Jae-sung watched her, and that's when it hit him. Not Song's words, not the insult, not the dismissive look or the calculated gesture of sliding the folder past him. None of that touched him. He was too powerful, too practiced, too solid for any of that to land. What hit him was watching Kira's face, the way her expression softened when Song said the words Eastern, Seoul operations, the way something moved behind her eyes, quiet, private, deep, when he mentioned her father's name, the way her fingers stayed on that folder like it was something precious, something she didn't want to let go of, her father's legacy, right there, handed to her on a plate. And Jae-sung knew, he knew with the same certainty he knew everything in this world, that this was dangerous, that the deal was a trap, that the stepmother was behind it, and nothing that woman touched was ever clean. He knew it in his bones. He could feel it the way a man who'd been in this world his whole life could feel poison in the air before it touched him. But Kira was considering it, and that, watching the woman he was already terrified of losing. Consider walking back into the exact danger he'd been fighting to keep her away from. That was the thing that broke something inside him. The thing that cracked the wall he'd built so carefully. The same crack that had started the night she said, because we're married. The same fear he'd carried since the very beginning. She might walk away, and she might walk straight into something that destroyed her. Both fears, at the same time, sitting right next to each other at a quiet restaurant in Gangnam on a normal Saturday evening. Kira finally looked up from the folder, met his eyes. I need to think about it, she said. 3 words, quiet, honest, not a decision, just a truth. And Jae-sung felt the ground shift beneath him. He didn't show it, not on his face, not in his voice. He was too good for that, but somewhere inside, somewhere deep and private and hidden behind years of control, something broke. Quietly, the way ice cracks in winter. You don't hear it, you just feel the ground change underneath you. Okay, he said. His voice was even, steady, the voice of a man in control. But his eyes told a different story. Kira saw it. She saw everything. She'd been watching him for months. She knew what. His silence sounded like when something was wrong. She knew what his stillness meant. And this particular silence, this particular stillness, was the loudest, heaviest thing she'd ever felt from him. They finished lunch without talking much. Paid, left, got in the car. The drive back to the apartment was quiet. Not the comfortable quiet they'd shared before. Not the warm kind that didn't need words. This was different. This was the quiet of two people sitting next to each other and feeling the space between them like it was made of something solid. Back at the apartment, Jae-sung sat by the window. No whiskey, no phone. Just him and the city, and the weight of what had happened at that table pressing down on him like something physical. Kira set her bag down, watched him for a moment from the doorway, then walked over and sat next to him. Not across, next to, close enough to touch. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Jae-sung turned to her, and his face, was open in a way she'd only seen once before. The night he told her why he couldn't be with her. The night he said he was terrified of losing her. Kira. His voice was low, careful, like he was holding something fragile. That deal, what Song put on the table. I know. It's not clean, it can't be. Your stepmother doesn't do anything without a reason, and the reason is never good. He paused, swallowed. The thing he was about to say was costing him something. She could see it in the way his jaw worked, the way his hand sat on his knees like he was gripping something invisible. But that's not what scares me. Kira looked at him, waiting. What scares me, he said slowly, like each word was being pulled out of somewhere deep, is that you said you'd think about it, and I watched your face when he said your father's name, and I could see it, Kira. I could see you wanting it, and He stopped, breathed. I know what happens if you go back into that world. I know what's waiting for you if you step out from behind where we've built. And I can't. His voice broke, just barely, just enough. I can't watch you walk into that. The apartment was so quiet she could hear the city breathing outside. This is the same fear, Kira said softly, not a question. He looked at her, and she saw it. The same raw, honest terror that had been in his eyes the night he refused her. The same thing that kept him up at night. The same thing that made him leave pressed flowers in her jacket pocket and ask about Minho every single day and build walls around her like she was the most important thing in the world. Because she was. Yes, he said, it's the same fear. Kira reached for his hand, took it, held it the way he'd held hers that first night in the car, carefully, like it was something precious. Listen to me, she said. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not walking into a trap. She squeezed his hand. But I am going to take back my father's legacy, not because Song offered it, not because my stepmother handed it over on a silver plate, because it's mine, because he built it for me, and because I was trained my entire life to do exactly this. Jae-sung looked at her. Something shifted in his expression. The fear didn't disappear. It was still there, underneath everything, but something else rose up next to it, something that looked like trust. How? He asked. Kira smiled, the kind of smile that had nothing to do with warmth and everything to do with the woman her father raised, the woman who'd stopped a mafia boss from signing away his empire with one sentence, the woman who'd stared down Choi in a warehouse and made him walk away. Together, she said, the way we do everything. They spent the next week planning, not just to take back the Eastern Seoul operations, but to do it in a way that her stepmother couldn't touch, couldn't reverse, couldn't use against them. Kira contacted the operators who'd been loyal to her, father, the ones who remembered him, the ones who respected what he built. She didn't come to them as a frightened daughter running from her life. She came as a successor, informed, prepared, knowing exactly what each of them needed and what she could offer in return, the way her father taught her. Jae-sung handled the financial architecture, structuring the transfer so it was airtight, clean, bulletproof, the kind of work that took patience and precision and the kind of mind that could see 10 moves ahead. And then Kira called her stepmother. The call lasted 4 minutes. I've been thinking about Song's proposal, Kira said. Her voice was calm, almost warm, the kind of calm that made people feel safe right up until the moment they realized they weren't. And her stepmother's voice, smooth, expectant, already calculating her next move. I want to meet, to discuss the transfer, in person, tomorrow, 10 o'clock. A pause. Aniyama, bring all the paperwork, because when I walk out of that room, this will be done, permanently. She hung up before her stepmother could respond. The meeting happened the next morning in a private office in a building Kira knew well. Her father used to bring her here when she was young. The smell of the place hit her the moment she walked in. Polished wood, old paper, something that smelled like memory. Her stepmother was already seated, composed, elegant, the picture of a woman in control. She looked at Kira and smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You look well, darling. Let's skip the pleasantries." Kira sat down, opened the folder Jae-sung had prepared. Every document, every financial record, every transaction from the last 6 months laid out with surgical precision. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign over the Eastern Seoul operations to me, completely, legally, irrevocably." Her stepmother's eyebrows rose, just slightly. "And in exchange?" Kira tapped the folder. "In exchange, I don't release this. Every embezzlement, every mismanaged account, every bad decision you made with my father's money after he died. It's all here, every single one." She leaned forward, her voice dropped, not louder, quieter, the way it got when she was most dangerous. "My father taught me how to read people, and you, Iyama, are the easiest person I've ever read." The room went silent. Her stepmother looked at the folder, looked at Kira, and in that single clear moment, she saw what everyone else had been too blind to see for months. This wasn't the girl who ran. This wasn't the frightened daughter hiding in a daycare somewhere in Seoul. This was Don Kwan's daughter. Finally, the paperwork was signed within the hour. Kira walked out of that building carrying her father's legacy in a leather folder, and when she stepped outside into the Seoul afternoon, the sunlight hit her face and she stopped. Just for a second. Closed her eyes, and breathed. She did it. That evening, the apartment felt different from anything they'd shared before. Not the tension of strategy, not the quiet weight of survival. Something lighter, something that felt almost like freedom. Jae-sung opened a bottle of wine, something expensive. They sat on the sofa, the city spread out before them, glittering like it belonged to them. "To Don Kwan," Jae-sung said, raising his glass. Kira's eyes filled. She raised hers. "To Don Kwan." They drank and laughed and talked about nothing important for the first time since they'd met, about movies they liked, about places they wanted to go, about the stupid argument Minho had with another kid over a toy truck that morning. Normal things, human things, the kind of conversation that only happened when two people stopped running and finally let themselves just exist together. At some point, the wine ran low and the conversation grew quieter. Not uncomfortable, the warm kind, the kind where words weren't needed because the silence said everything. Kira turned to him. The lamplight was soft. The city hummed outside like something alive. She looked at him the way she'd been wanting to look at him for weeks, maybe longer, the way that had nothing to do with strategy or survival or gratitude, the way that had everything to do with him. "Hey," she said. "Hey." "I see you," she said, simply, quietly. "I see all of you, Jae-sung, not the boss, not the protector, not the man who builds walls so no one can break him." She reached out and touched his face, gently, like she was memorizing the shape of him. "I see the man who leaves pressed flowers in my jacket pocket, who asks about Minho every single day, who couldn't sleep after what Song said at that table, not because it hurt your pride, because you were scared for me." She held his gaze. "That man, I see him, and I'm not going anywhere." Jae-sung didn't move, didn't breathe, like one wrong move might shatter whatever this was becoming. "Kira, don't." She smiled, soft, real. "Don't protect yourself, not tonight, not from me." He looked at her, and the wall, the last piece of it, the part he'd been holding up with both hands since the night she said, "Because we're married," finally let go, not with a crash, not dramatically, it just released. He leaned in, slowly, like he was giving her every chance to pull back. She didn't. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, the way two people kiss when they've been wanting to for a long time and are still not entirely sure they deserve it. Then it wasn't tentative anymore. His hand found the side of her face, gently, carefully, like she was something he couldn't believe was real. Her fingers curled into the front of his shirt, not pulling, just holding, like an anchor. They stayed like that for a long time, foreheads touching, breathing the same air, the city burning behind them. Then Kira pulled back, just enough to look at him, her eyes warm, open, no walls, no masks, no survival, just her. "Tonight I want you," she said. Quiet, certain, the way she said everything that mattered, like it was the truest thing she'd ever spoken. "Not because we're married, because I want you." Something in Jae-sung's chest opened up, something that had been locked shut for a very long time. something that had been waiting for exactly these words. Not duty, not arrangement, not obligation, want, real want, freely given. He looked at her, and for the first time since he'd known her, he didn't hesitate, didn't pull back, didn't protect himself. He stood, and before she could say another word, he reached for her, one arm beneath her knees, the other around her back, and lifted her. Gently, completely, the way a man holds something he's been afraid to touch for months and has finally let himself reach for. Kira looked up at him. Her arms went around his neck, and she laughed. Quiet, surprised, the kind of laugh that came from somewhere deep and happy, and real. "Show off," she whispered. The corner of his mouth moved, that almost smile, the one that was closer to real than anything else about him. He carried her toward the bedroom, the city glittering outside the windows. Seoul, alive and indifferent, not knowing or caring that inside one apartment on the 15th floor, two people who started as strangers were finally completely letting each other in. The door closed softly behind them. The morning light came through the curtains, soft and unhurried. Kira woke first, still close to him, his arm around her like he'd been holding on even in sleep, like somewhere in his dreams he was still afraid she might disappear. She didn't move, just watched him for a moment. The way his face looked in the morning, softer, younger, every wall he carried during the day, gone, like sleep had given him back something the waking world kept trying to take. She reached out and brushed the hair from his forehead. Gently, his eyes opened, found hers immediately, like he'd been looking for her even before he was fully awake. "Morning," she whispered. "Morning." His voice was rough, warm. They lay there, not rushing, not needing to. The plan was done. The stepmother was dealt with. Choi was gone. The Eastern Seoul operations were hers. Everything they'd fought for, everything they'd survived, had led to this. This quiet morning, this stillness, this. Jae-sung traced his finger along her arm, slowly, like he was memorizing her. "Kira. Last night." He paused, like he was choosing his words carefully, the way he always did when something mattered. "Was that real?" She looked at him and smiled, the kind of smile that answered everything before the words even left her mouth. "It was the most real thing that's ever happened to me." He pulled her closer, and she let him, and the morning light kept coming through the curtains, warm and unhurried, like the world outside had finally decided to slow down too. They stayed like that for a long time, no words, no plans, no next move, just two people who found each other in the middle of chaos and chose, quietly, stubbornly, completely to stay. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing there is. If this story moved something inside you, if Jae-sung and Kira made you feel something real, then you already know what to do. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear a story about what real love actually looks like. Not the loud kind, the kind that builds itself slowly, in silence, in small moments, in the way two people learn to trust each other and then decide to stop running. Until next time. Remember, the bravest thing you can do is let someone see you, really see you, and stay anyway.